Welcome back. Let's get right into it. We are in the middle of an exciting and adventurous chapter 8 in our book, The Fairy Tale Detectives, Sisters Grimm, by Michael Buckley. And there's nothing else. We just got to get right into it. Jack and Puck hate each other, right? Jack is the giant beast guy who fights giants, and he is at the home at the Grimm's house, and he was taking a nap, and Sabrina and Daphne are also taking a nap, and they are hoping that the next day they're going to be able to save Granny Relda. We just got to get right into it. Let's find out what happens next. Sabrina didn't remember falling asleep, but when she woke up, she was still in her clothes, and it was already 9 o'clock in the morning. She crawled out of bed, leaving her snoring sister alone, and walked down the hallway. She heard a sound from Granny Relda's room and decided to investigate, but when she opened the door, no one was there. She stepped inside and noticed a framed photo on the old woman's dresser. It was of Granny and Grandpa hugging happily under an apple tree. As usual, Mr. Canis was standing nearby. His face seemed slightly out of focus, and the camera flash had turned his eyes a bright blue color. Sabrina reached into her pocket and pulled out the photo she found in Granny Relda's handbag. Comparing the two, she found the same odd effect over Mr. Canis. Sabrina was as surprised that she hadn't noticed it before. "What are you doing in here?" Puck's voice asked. It startled Sabrina, and she dropped both the pictures and the framed photo to the ground. Luckily, the glass didn't break. Sabrina looked around the room, searching for the boy, but didn't see him. "Where are you?" "I'm up here, ugly," said Puck. Sabrina looked up and nearly screamed. A housefly the size of Elvis was sitting upside down on the ceiling above her, but its enormous size wasn't nearly as disturbing as its human head, which had shaggy blonde hair, a gold crown, and a mischievous grin. Apparently, Puck had a whole bag of disturbing tricks. "What are you doing in here?" Sabrina demanded. It's the only quiet room in the house," Puck replied. "Besides, I know you and Jack have got your big plans. Wouldn't want to get in the way of that. Could you come down here?" Puck suddenly morphed back into a human form and fell clumsily to the bed below. "You're being a baby," Sabrina said. "Jack wants to help, and you can't stand not being the center of attention." "Whatever," the boy replied. "But when he gets you into trouble, don't be angry when I remind you that I told you so." "You got a better plan? Then let's hear it. Because all I've heard from you is the never-ending buzzing of your flapping lips," Sabrina snapped. "My parents ran out on me and Daphne almost 2 years ago. We've been through the ringer and have been bounced around far too long. I admit it. We met Granny Relda and I didn't want anything to do with her. But now that I know that she's the real deal, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get her back. I've lost one family. I'm not losing another. So if you have a better idea, then I'm all ears." "Don't look at me," Puck said. "I made no promises to the old lady. She knew I wasn't a good little boy when we met." Sabrina was taken aback by his insensitivity. "So you couldn't care less about what happens to her?" "Look, I've learned one thing in this life of mine. Look out for yourself. Everyone else just ends up disappointing you." "Oh, so you won't help?" "I'm not one of the good guys," Puck said. Suddenly, the sound of Elvis's barking filled the room. Sabrina peered into the hallway. There, she saw Jack fighting with Elvis, who was shredding the man's pants in his angry teeth. "Get this beast away from me! He's rabid!" Jack begged. "What are you doing up here?" Sabrina asked suspiciously. "I was coming up to wake you." Daphne entered the hallway, rubbing her eyes from her sleep. "What's going on?" "The giant killer is prowling around the house looking for something to steal," Puck said. "Your savior has sticky fingers." "Shut your mouth, you dirty little hooligan," Jack shouted. "It'll take more than your words to make that happen, you thieving barn rat." "Elvis," Daphne said as she patted the angry dog on the head. Her touch seemed to have a calming effect on him. "Take a chill pill." Elvis released Jack's pant leg from his teeth. "Thank you," Jack said, eyeing his mangled trousers. "So, are you ready to hear my plan?" Sabrina looked at Puck, hoping the boy might reconsider and help them, but he sneered and he looked away. "Yes, we're ready," she replied. Puck said nothing. He walked down the stairs and out the door, slamming it behind him. "We don't need him anyway," Jack said. "Is anyone hungry? Let's have some breakfast." He rushed down the stairs and into the kitchen. The girls followed behind. They watched as he rifled through the contents of the refrigerator. "There's nothing to eat in this house," Jack complained. "I could really go for some bubbling squink or some bangers. Do you kids think you could cook me up some steak and kidney pie for me?" The girls stared. "I hear noises coming from his mouth, but they don't sound like words," Daphne said. "Maybe he's having some kind of fit," Sabrina said. Jack rolled his eyes, snatched up some leftovers, and he ate greedily. "Let me tell you kids," he said, his mouth full, "prison food is terrible." "We'll take your word for it," Sabrina said. While Jack ate, the girls took turns telling him how Granny Relda and Mr. Kenneth had been kidnapped. Sabrina told him their theory about Mayor Charming being the mysterious Mr. Englishman and how she thought he was using the giant to scare people off their land. "Okay, so tell us your plan," Daphne said as Jack finished his breakfast. "Well, I'm still working on the details." Both the girls flashed Jack an angry look. "Don't worry," he said defensively. "It's going to be brilliant." Sabrina had had enough. She got up from her seat and grabbed the telephone. "We helped you escape from prison so you could help us save our grandmother, and all you've done is eat our food and drool on our sofa," she raged. "If you can't do it, then I'm just going to go call Deputy Crane and tell him that, you're ready to go back to jail." "Put that phone down and relax," Jack said calmly as he helped himself to another chicken leg. "You think tracking down Granny and a giant is easy? Giants have survived thousands of years, being as big as they are, and they've learned a few things about staying out of sight when they need to. Now we can go trap peas to the woods, cut down the forest, and drag the Hudson River. But the fact is that if a giant doesn't want to be found, he's not going to be found." "You're talking in circles," Sabrina complained. "What I'm saying is that we have to be smarter than a giant to catch a giant. You said it yourself. The mayor was trying to cover up what happened to that farm. It's no secret that he wants to buy up the entire town. What better way than to get a giant to scare off the landowners who won't sell? So when your family started snooping around, he sent the big boy after you. He's got your granny, and now he's after the two of you. All the evidence you need was chasing us down Main Street yesterday." "Go on," Sabrina said as she sat the phone back into its cradle. "Now, knowing Charming, he's got a map of Fairport Landing in his office with all the property that he's after and where he's going to send the giant next. All you have to do is sneak into that office during the ball tonight, find the map, and see where the giant's target is next. Then we show up, the giant shows up, and I do what I do, and bingo bango, the big bad, and save your grandmother." Okay, I have to apologize. This is supposed to be an English accent, and I'm really messing it up. But we're just going to have to go with it because Jack is English, British, whatever you want to say. "That's your big plan?" Sabrina cried. "Well, you got something better? I know that sneaking into the ball doesn't sound as exciting as burning down the forest and waiting for the giant to run out, but I've always had a mind that tells me the easiest way is the best way." "There's one big problem, though," Daphne spoke up. "The mayor and the police are looking for us. We're going to have a tough time sneaking into the place." "Oh, girls, you're going to go right through the front door and no one is going to even notice you," Jack said confidently. After he'd eaten, he insisted the best way to digest a meal was to follow it with another kip/nap. As their hero rested, the girls frantically searched the books for anything that might help. Eventually, they came upon one of their grandfather Basil's many journals. Inside, he had sketched out a rough plan of Charming's estate, his house. The mayor's mansion was a sprawling, several-story palace with dozens of rooms. Their grandpa had given estimates of room sizes, locations, various windows, and even an indication of a wall he believed held a secret door. But Grandpa hadn't seen all of the house, and many parts of the drawing were labeled with question marks. Sabrina noticed he had paid extra attention to possible escape routes. Apparently, Grandpa had been a bit of a sneak as well. Sabrina carefully studied the map and did her best to commit it to memory. When Jack finally woke up several hours later, he found the girls ready to get started. "The first thing we need is the magic mirror," Jack said. "I don't know what you're talking about," Sabrina said, stealing a look into Daphne's eyes. "Girls, I know Relda has the magic mirror. Everyone knows that. Why do you think the front door has a dozen locks on it?" Sabrina took the keys out of her pocket and led her sister and their guest up the steps. Once they arrived at the mirror's room, she inserted the key and unlocked the door. As before, the face in the mirror was filled with rage at the invasion. "Who dares?" he bellowed. Jack strolled in without a care, followed by the girls. "Turn off the drama, Mia," he scoffed. "Oh, it's just you," Mia mumbled. "Of course it's me. I'm the bloke you called when you have a big problem, and these girls have a really big problem," Jack bragged. Bloke is like guy. It's like a bloke, when he says, "I'm the bloke that you call," it's like, "I'm the guy that you call." It's like a British thing. "And where's the carpet?" the face in the mirror asked Sabrina. "Sorry," she said. She walked to the doorway and called for it. After a couple of minutes, the carpet floated limply into the room. "What have you done to it?" Mira cried as the carpet fell to the floor and once again rolled itself up. "I think we had too many people on it," Daphne explained, and as a hand broke the surface of the mirror and snatched the carpet from the ground. "It's nearly unraveled in my hand," the face wailed as he babied the rug. "Poor little carpet, look at how they treated you." "Too many years hanging on a wall in the Grimm's house could have made you a real sourpuss," Jack commented. "How can I help you?" Mira asked, brushing off the insult. "We need to sneak into Charming's mansion tonight, and we need some disguises," Jack said. "Not a problem at all. And we need slippers." The mirror frowned. "Absolutely not," he stammered. "Slippers? What? Listen, this house is going to be surrounded with the police any minute now. Alibaba carpet isn't going to get us into Charming's mansion. We need the slippers," Jack argued. "Mrs. Grimm would not approve. The slippers were entrusted to this family so they would never fall into the wrong hands," the mirror replied. "You can trust me," said Jack. "Didn't you used to have your own magic items? What happened to the cloak of darkness?" "I lost it in a poker game." "You lost a cloak that turns you invisible in a poker game? Well, what about the shoes of swiftness?" "I hawked them." "The cap of knowledge? The goose that laid the golden egg?" "Lost the cap in a game of dice, and I accidentally left the window open one day, and the goose flew out." "I suppose you sold the sword of sharpness?" Mira grumbled. "No, I still have the sword of sharpness," said Jack indignantly. "I just misplaced it. It's in my flat somewhere. The point is we need the slippers. If you won't let me have them, then let one of the girls wear the slippers. It doesn't make any difference to me." "What slippers?" Sabrina asked. She was tired of their bickering. "Dorothy slippers," Jack and Mira shouted. "Dorothy? From the Wizard of Oz?" Daphne exclaimed. "Yes," Jack said impatiently. "They can transport you anywhere you want to go. All you have to do is click 3 times," Daphne cried. "Give me the slippers!" "Girls, I have to warn you, the slippers are very powerful magic. People have died trying to get them. There are still some in this town who would slit your throats to possess them," Mira said. "Enough of this," Jack said, and then he did something that shocked Sabrina. He stepped into the reflection and pushed the man in the mirror aside. "How dare you!" Mira shouted. "Come on, kids, keep up," Jack said as his face appeared in the reflection. The girls were kind of unsure what to do. Daphne reached up and curled her hand into her sister's. Sabrina squeezed softly, and the two of them took a tentative step towards the mirror. It was a cool sensation, almost as if they had been caught in a summer rainstorm, and when they finally opened their eyes, a brilliant, glimmering light flooded their pupils. What they saw made Sabrina queasy. It wasn't natural. It just wasn't possible. Sabrina had expected to walk into a reflection of the room they had been in. After all, the mirror was a mirror, but she couldn't have been more wrong. Instead, she found herself in a long, wide hallway that reminded her of Grand Central Station, which is a train station. It was vast, with vaulted ceilings and endless archways of glass and steel. Glowing marble columns held up the ceiling, which rose hundreds of feet above them. Breathtaking sculptures of men and monsters lined the hall, and along each wall were hundreds of doors of all shapes and sizes, some bigger than a rabbit, others 100 feet high. Some were wooden, others were steel, and others seemed to be made of light. Sabrina looked down at Granny Relda's key ring and realized what all the keys were for. Yet another of Granny's eccentricities had a legitimate explanation. Well, I can't even say that word. What it means is like weird habits. When someone does something weird, or if you call someone eccentric, it means they do things differently. And now she's realizing that Granny Relda does everything for a purpose. She doesn't just carry around 100 keys just because. Each key has a purpose. That's what she's learning. "Keep your hands in your pocket, Jack," the man insisted. A short, chubby little man in a black suit and tie, which was the face of the mirror. "Mia, I'm shocked you don't trust me," Jack said. "I trust you about as much as the person who gave you that fat lip," said the mirror. "What is this place?" Daphne asked. "It's an arcane-powered, multi-facet, trans-dimensional pocket universe," Mirror replied. "A what who?" "Your grandmother calls it the biggest walk-in closet," the little man sighed. "It's sort of a holding area for dangerous or valuable items. I call it the Hall of Wonders, and you're not supposed to be in here." "Oh, Mia," Jack said, "we've learned one of your secrets. Don't worry, I'm sure you have a million more." The little man's face flushed with anger. His fist clenched, and he looked as if he might hit Jack, but the giant killer just ignored him. Ooh, look, we have a picture. Okay, so that looks like that's the mirror, and you can see all of the different doors in the background. "All right, Mia, where are the slippers?" Jack asked impatiently. "This way," Mir said, gesturing for them to follow. He walked down the long hall past many doors. The plaque on one read, "Fairy Godmother Wands," while the next read, "Talking Plants." As they continued down the hallway, they found more doors labeled "Poisonous Fruit," "Dragon Eggs," "Impossible Animals," "Wishing Wells," "Crystal Balls," "Cursed Treasures," "Scrolls and Prophecies," and on and on and on. Passing one massive door, the group jumped as a violent pounding from within threatened to knock it off its hinges. Something on the other side wanted out, something named Grendel. The group passed on down the hallway where they finally stopped at the door that read, "Magic Shoes." "Here we are," Mir said reluctantly, "but I must once again remind you that magic is dangerous. There's a reason why the Ever-Afters asked this family to look after all these things. Magic in the wrong hands only leads to chaos." "Well, be careful," said Sabrina as she knelt down to the lock. It was a simple one that would take a skeleton key, but Granny's key rings had dozens of skeleton keys. Sabrina tried the first one, and it failed. She tried another, still nothing. "Let me try," Jack said impatiently. "I've got it," Sabrina snapped. She turned another key, and this time the lock opened. The door swung wide, and everyone entered. The room was simple, but its contents were amazing. That means the things inside of it. Along the walls were hundreds of pairs of shoes, cowboy boots, woven sandals, wooden clogs, leather moccasins, and many more, all displayed on wooden shelves. Some of the shoes seemed as if they had been made for animals, while others were big enough for the entire group to stand in. One golden pair had downy white wings that flapped as if the shoes were alive, and another glittering pair were made of pure glass. I wonder which ones are those. Cinderella. Jack picked up the pair of shoes with wings, but the little man promptly smacked his hand and snatched them from his grip. After replacing the shoes, Mir crossed the room, picked up a pair of sparkling silver slippers, and he handed them to Sabrina. "Try to take better care of these than you did with the magic carpet," he said gruffly. If these were the famous ruby slippers, they were more silver than red, though in the light Sabrina saw hints of a warm rosy color. She couldn't figure out what they were made of, but if they were forced to guess, she would say something like tinfoil. Okay, Dorothy, Wizard of Oz, if you haven't watched the movie or heard of the thing, basically there's this girl Dorothy, she gets picked up in a tornado, goes and flies to the land of Oz. She goes on this adventure and ends up, all she wants to do is to go back home to Kansas, which is in the United States. She finally gets to this place and she's given these red ruby slippers. And all she has to do is click her heels 3 times and says, "There's no place like home, there's no place like home, there's no place like home." She gets transported home, which obviously they want to do this because they want to get transported somewhere. If you ask me, this would be a very, very cool and handy thing. You would not need to go on airplanes anymore. Back to the story. "Put them on, child," the little man said. "They're way too small," Sabrina said as she eyed the shoe. "One size fits all," Jack said. Sabrina yanked off her sneakers and slid her foot inside one of the slippers, which magically grew in size and fit her foot perfectly. Once she had the other one on, an odd energy crept up her legs and filled her whole body. Just then, Jack darted out of the room and across the hall. "Jack!" the little man shouted after him, but Jack didn't listen. When they finally found him, the giant killer was eyeing a door with a plaque that read, "Magic Beans." "I can't believe you have a whole room of them!" he shouted with glee. "We might be bending the rules on the slippers, but those are off limits to the likes of you," Mir said. "How about just a peek?" Jack pleaded. He suddenly looked like a lost boy. "These things are part of my past. Can't a man take a walk down memory lane?" Sabrina could see his expression, and all at once she felt sorry for him. Jack was a man whom the world had loved. He had seen amazing things. He had lived his life to his fullest, but being trapped in Fairyport Landing had put an end to all of it. It dawned on Sabrina that Fairyport Landing might have been the home of many of the world's fairy tale creatures, but it was also a prison that they were never allowed to leave. It just didn't seem right. Sabrina pulled out the keys, knelt down, eyed the keyhole, and within seconds opened the door. Jack pushed past her into the tiny room, where a single mason jar on the table. Inside it was a collection of little white beans. Jack gasped and picked up the jar. "There must be 100 of them!" Mir snatched the jar out of his hand and placed it on the table. "These things are dangerous. If you dropped them on the floor, would be ear-deep in giants." Jack scowled for a moment and looked as if he were ready to fight for this treasure. But he took a deep breath, and his anger vanished, only to be replaced with a boyish grin. "Thanks, Grims. You don't know what you've done for me," he said. Mir hurried everyone back through the door. "Well, ladies, now that we've got the shoes, we need the proper disguises," Jack said. "I think a little fairy godmother magic will do the trick." "Wands are over here," Mir said, leading them down the hallway. They stopped at the door labeled "Fairy Godmother Wands," and Sabrina unlocked it. Inside, a small black cauldron sat on a tiny table with several skinny sticks popping out at the top. Mir reached into the pot and removed one that had a glittering glass star on the end and handed it to Sabrina. "The first magical item your family ever had to confiscate," Mir said. "Confiscate, take away." "I remember old Willem Grimm's trying to get that away from her," Jack laughed. Girls, I'll say one thing about your family. They are brave. Fairy godmother's the sweetest pie on the outside, but try to take away their wands and they can get downright mean. Indeed, the mirror said. How does this work? Sabrina asked. Mirror frowned. I can't believe your father, he cried. I'd hoped that your mother Veronica might at least give you the basics behind his back. Very well, this is the changing wand used by Cinderella's fairy godmother. It will alter your clothes, shoes, even your bodies in any way that you want. Charming's ball is going to be filled to the rafters with ever afters, Jack said. You're going to go in as one of them. Daphne smiled. I know what I want to be. I want to be the Tin Woodsman. Are you sure, honey? The little man in the mirror asked. Tin is so last season. Daphne nodded enthusiastically. Very well, it's your fashion funeral, he said. Sabrina, say, Tin Woodsman, make 3 small circles with the wand and then tap her on the head. Okay, Sabrina said. Tin Woodsman. She made 3 awkward circles in the air and then smacked her sister on the head with the wand. Daphne squealed in pain and rubbed the spot. But as she was rubbing, a miraculous change began to occur. Her skin took on a silvery tone. She grew several feet taller and her clothes faded, only to be replaced by gears and joints. Her hair retreated into her scalp and a shiny funnel took its place. Sabrina blinked, her eyes to be sure that they weren't playing tricks on her. But she knew that they weren't. Her sister had become the Tin Woodsman. I don't know if you guys know what a Tin Woodsman is. It's like a man made out of tin. If you don't know what tin, like metal. Like a man made out of metal. That hurt, Daphne cried as her hands scraped against her new metallic head. Hearing the screeching of metal in her ears, she looked at her hand and squealed in delight. Look at me! Spit in the image, Jack said. Daphne took the wand from her sister. Okay, what do you want to be? Sabrina was stumped. She realized she had to choose wisely. She needed to be inconspicuous at the ball, someone small and unnoticeable, and someone who could be very, very sneaky. Okay, I was thinking, I know, Mama Bear, the little girl interrupted, and before Sabrina could stop her, she performed the circles and was cracking her big sister on the head. Sabrina felt the transformation immediately, as if her body was being inflated. Her clothes disappeared and were replaced with a bright pink and white polka-dotted dress that ended well above her knee. She looked down at her humongous arms and groaned as her hair exploded from every pore. Fangs burst from the top of her mouth and razor-sharp claws sprang from her neat fingernails and her toes. She could feel them scratching at the inside of the ruby slippers. She had expanded to fit her new 26 feet. When the transformation was complete, Daphne giggled. You did that on purpose, Sabrina growled. You're so cute, Daphne cried as she threw her metal arms around her sister and gave her a big hug. I could just eat you up. She's a bear now. Well, no one's going to see the two of you coming, Jack moaned, though it was obvious he found the whole thing funny. Girls, you realize there's a timer with this magic. When the clock strikes 9 o'clock, you're going to change back. Do you understand? Mira lectured. 9 o'clock? I thought it was midnight. Cinderella had until midnight, Sabrina argued. Cinderella was 17 years old. You are 11. There's no way your grandmother would approve of you staying out until the wee hours of the morning. We're trying to save her life, Sabrina pointed out. Still, children should not be allowed at the late, thus your magic wears off at 9, Mir said. That doesn't give us much time. It's 7 o'clock right now, Jack said, eyeing his wristwatch. Mir took the wand from Daphne and put it back into the pot. He led the group out of the room, closed the door, and when Sabrina couldn't manage, locked it with Granny's keys. One last thing, Jack said. You don't happen to have any walkie-talkies in this place, do you? Walkie-talkies are like radios. So you can be like, psh, psh, roger that. I don't know if you've ever seen a walkie-talkie. Whew, that's chapter 8. Man, I don't know about you, but I would love to go to a hallway that just has a bunch of magic stuff. That'd be so cool. Okay, guys. Well, look at this. Chapter 9. Look, there's a picture of Daphne and Sabrina. The Tin Man, who is Daphne, and the Mama Bear, which is Sabrina. Isn't that funny? Okay, guys, well, we're just going to have to see what happens at Charming's ball, but this story is kind of coming to a close. We're getting to, look at that, we've read quite a bit. Okay, guys, well, I will see you next time when we find out what happens at Prince Charming's ball. I can't wait. Bye.